Hi, it's Pete, Mindwiseman's channel, aka Maverick Outdoors, and it's 2019, the end of August, bank holiday weekend in the UK. And I'm out for a wild camp for the next couple of days. This weekend's going to be absolutely brilliant weather, so going to make the most of it. So as you can see, I've set up my basher, 3 by 3 meters DD tarp, and got plenty of kit with me for the weekend. So it's all creature comforts. I've got my firebox stove, gas cooker, also I'm going to have a fire pit, just had a snack there. MRE army issue ration pack, rat pack, and it's pasta and bean salad. So I ate that cold, few calories after that paddle to get here and setting up what have you. Next little bit of work I'm going to do is collect some deadfall or standing deadwood for my fire pit later on. I'm going to grill up some sausages and some chicken thighs. So I'm just going to take this video as I go along really over the weekend, if there's any sort of highlights that I think of any interest, because this sort of setup that I've got I've featured many times before in my wild camps when I've been out on the canoe. So the 3 by 3 tarp is the same setup I've actually done when I've actually been here before. Lucky enough, actually this weekend I was expecting to be quite busy. There's a lot of launches on the waterways, canoeists, stand-up paddleboard paddlers, and also arriving here I expected maybe some canoeists to be wild camping along this riverbank area, but no one yet. So this is only Saturday, but I would presume maybe Sunday and Monday I'd imagine that river paddlers would be out. But I'd imagine more people will be out and it'll be a bit more lively on the waterways the next few days. As you can see there, I've got my hammock for some leisurely swinging, not literally, a bit later on and all during the weekend. Also I've got my comfy chair. Quick guided tour of that. Fold up chair you've seen before. I didn't bring my fishing fold up bed this time. I've brought 2 mattresses, self-inflatables, and I'm just going to sleep on the ground over this weekend. That'll be comfy enough for me. I've got all my usual bits and bobs, if you want to call it sort of hardware, my heavy-duty gloves, knee pads, fire lighting kit, bolo machete, my pruners, which will cut off some of the deadwood, which is easier to do than actually saw it. I've actually got a folding saw as well, and then I've got my old faithful prototype, one of Jack Law Sandy's very first knives from about 5 odd years ago. Sandy's said to me many times that it's not as good quality as the expertly made knives he now makes, but you know, it was a prototype when he first started out, and it's got pretty big sentimental value for me, considering the purpose behind it and why he gave it to me, etc., which I've commented on and brought that up and highlighted before in previous videos. And I've come out in my Maverick Explorer Mark 1, the very first one I got made, before the Mark 3, which has obviously gone to market and people are now buying. But this one I got made about 3 years ago. And again, if you followed my activities or followed the progress of getting the Maverick Explorer inflatable canoe made, heavy duty, so I've got a review video which I put up about just over a year ago, and it highlights all the spec on it, so if you haven't checked it out, then give that video a click on. So the Mark 1 was some of the first designs when I was actually getting specific ideas for it, and then of course it developed into the Mark 3, which you could just see just there in that still picture. It's got slightly different features, so everything is all specific for fishing up to level 4, rapids, white water, that sort of thing. But just now and then I like to come out in the old sentimental first one. So from some of the previous inflatable canoes that I had, getting my own one designed and approaching a global manufacturer in inflatable boats gave them the idea, and hence, you know, the rest now is history, and I'm now getting them made. So if you want to make any inquiries, there's always the email address, which is the main point of communication and inquiries. Initially I only got the canoe made just for my own use, but I had so many inquiries and people saying, you know, where'd you get it from? So that's why I then brought it to the market about 2/3 the retail price that any other company would actually be selling it. And I'd always wanted a reliable canoe inflatable which can go into the boot of the car, fit all my kit in, etc., and take up to nearly 300 kilos in weight, and it's of course got a stand-on floor. So it's not like the Seville Colorado I used to use, where you stand on it. As a lot of inflatable canoes, it bows down in the bow and the stern tipper. But with the Maverick Explorer and the drop stitch floor you can see there, which is a sort of creamy white colour, is 10 psi, so it's a really solid floor, which means it keeps its shape, and just like the chambers, which will also take up to 3 to 4 psi, which is much more of a sturdy inflation and high pressure than normal single membrane canoes. The cheaper, lower quality inflatables can only take up to maybe 1 psi if you're lucky, but it normally ranges between 0.5 to 1. So I've just highlighted a few features on the Maverick Explorer inflatable canoe. As I say, if you want to have a look at the, if you haven't seen it already, then have a look at the review, which gives the whole spec, the A to Z of what the canoe's about. And I've only brought it up again because I've had lots of inquiries, people saying, oh, when you're going out in the canoe again, can you show us it in action, that sort of thing. But as I say, it's always on the review if there's any information that you want to get. But back to this bank holiday, it's brilliant weather. I mean, I'm sort of quite hot here. Lucky enough I'm in the shade, purposefully actually being in this location and pitch. So I've got a bit of sun that's surrounding me. I wouldn't really need to have the basher put up. It's just nice to have that sort of enclosure over the top. And if there was any random shower that just came out of nowhere, which can happen, at least I'm protected. But I could actually sort of pitch out on the floor and have this location without any shelter put up at all. But as I said previously, this is going to be a bit of a video diary. Nothing too sort of high spec, but if I get any ideas as I'm going along, it's going to be a bit of firebox cooking, just a few aspects of how my Himalayan trek went when I went to Everest Base Camp in May this year. So this is the first time out actually in the canoe doing a wild camp since the latter part of last year. I think it was maybe October, November time, when I had to go ahead after the leg surgery that everything would be okay. And so I then booked it and then started training for it. So this is the first time actually out in the canoe wild camping on the rivers since really the latter part of last year. Anyway, there's a bit of deadfall, so I'm going to go and look for some stand in Deadwood and also deadfall ready for the fire pit and cooking later on, which is going to be around about that location. So all of this was stand in Deadwood or fallen. I never take any live wood, and there's some smaller bits that I've broken up there as well. But normally what I do, you'll have seen me do this before as well, I use a plastic sheet. And just an example, when I'm picking them up off the ground, I'll just collect them up. Then all you got to do is, once it's full, then you just carry it, easier to carry. Or else I can open it all the way out, that's 1 metre by 2 metres, open it all the way out and then carry even more wood if I need to. And El Cheapo folding saw, and then my bolo machete, Brazilian machete, it's really good. Dig fire pits with this, which is what I'm going to do in a moment. As a lot of you will know, I like being really organised in my basher setup. It's not OCD or paranoid or anything like that. It's just actually being organised. I've always been like it. And so there's my food box, my water, that's what I got, folding table. Also I got a toasted sandwich maker to cook and heat up some chocolate croissant type bready cakes. And then there I've got all my sleep kit and what have you. The boots were playing up actually on my bad foot, so I've put my old bashed up trainers on, which are much more comfortable for my dodgy left foot. So that's the update so far. Guy lines always using to hang up air clothes or dry them, as that vest got a little bit sweaty when I was paddling here. And then this other end right in the direct sunlight, late afternoon, it's about 5 o'clock in the evening. It's going to have a lot of sunlight, plus all the heat pressure dries quite quickly anyway in the shade. But that's my sweat wipe, and that's also one of my white clean rags, and my rubbish bag, which I've just got wedged in the eyelet of the tarp. But when it gets a bit more heavy, I'm just going to toggle it. So that's me rubbish area, which of course is in close contact to when I need to dispose of anything in the cooking area. But things like first thing in the morning when you want to make a brew quickly, and like I did when I arrived, put up my shelter and then had something to eat, made a brew on the camping gas stove. And also I've got the Hexi stove if anything fails. I've got the firebox. So I've got quite a treat this weekend. I've got a total choice, 4 different elements to cook on, and of course then the fire pit. The folding Hexi stove is always in my kit anyway, so I've always got that for backup. But the things I purposely brought out with the camping gas stove and the firebox. Especially if I couldn't find enough wood, or some of my stored wood that I'd stashed away from last year. Someone found a bit of it, but there was about half of it left, so of course if there wasn't any wood I can use smaller amounts to actually cook on the firebox. So, and it's just nice, it's nice tactile for the weekend, have a choice of things to do. And of course, having a heavy duty canoe, I can bring everything with me that I want out of choice by the kitchen sink. And from out of the food box, I've got myself something to eat, because there's a couple of hours, good few hours have gone now since I had something else to eat earlier. So I've got my own MRE here, which is a tin of stuffed red peppers with cod, sort of all minced up, and then a veg dish, which is Greek style. Again, this is all long life tin stuff. Green beans in tomato sauce, so I can just eat those out of the can, really convenient, and then get the fire pit ready. Get the fire pit ready to cook later on, probably when it gets dark, when it's a bit cooler, and then I won't get too hot from the actual fire itself, and then also the sun. But I don't want to be sort of double barreled and have the heat from the fire and also the heat from the sun, which is still really warm at the moment. So it will actually complement the slight drop in temperature when it gets a little bit fresher this evening. Even though it's still going to be mild, I can then get the nice sort of effect of the fire and also cooking my food. My final meal of the day. It's all about eating when you're outdoors, no different from when you're at home. Meanwhile, this will keep me going for a while. Just had a mouthful of each, and it's really nice and tangy and fresh and quite cool because it's been out the heat and in the tins. Okay, so I've just boiled up some water to make a cup of tea, which is now on my little stick table. But the reason why I've got this stick table with me this weekend is that I can actually move it around, place it wherever I'm going to move the chair. In this case it's now sort of slightly in the shade out of the direct sun. And also the folding stool I can move around, and when I'm sort of prepping everything on the table, doing it over there, I can actually just sit down and move that around, and if I did need to I could actually use that to just rest things on as well. So hence 2 lots of seating, 2 lots of tables. So I've got the variety of using different bits of kit because obviously I can bring it in the canoe without any problems of having to limit my kit, without having to limit it at all. So the bag I'm using for my rubbish is a postal mail bag, but I've turned it inside out, so as it's high profile, sort of hanging, I can put it on the floor, put it on the ground, but I've turned it inside out. You can see, there you go, it speaks for itself. Mail bag. Turn it inside out so it's dark, so anything that I have on a high profile, like this was originally a white serviette, I dyed that brown. That nappy, which was one of my son's, which I bleached and cleaned, which again is a wipe cloth or sweat cloth, can use it for, and I've got a few of those. I dyed that sort of a tanny brown, so anything that's sort of high profile, if it's hanging to dry. You know, I'm not being super stealth, but you know, If people come over and find me, then fine, but I don't want to advertise it, so I don't like bright colours. So yeah, if you look hard enough, you can see, but once you get down to ground level, that's where maybe the brighter colours are. Hence, that's why the colour scheme of the Maverick Explorer canoe, especially the Mark III, is all dark colours. So the floor is now black, it's all camo. The only things that maybe highlight that might be reflective are the D-rings, which are stainless steel, but that's about it really. But back to the rubbish bag. What I've done, you can see I've just pulled that through the eyelet of the tarp, then made a hole and then just toggled it, put a little bit of stick through so when it hangs down it catches on there and it won't drop. Plus as well, being off the ground, it won't attract insects off the ground, albeit there's a few flies, but not as much as what there would be on the ground. But actually I'll take that back, I haven't seen any flies buzzing around the rubbish bag at all. But of course there's going to be more insects on ground level. Okay, so before I get any wise guys saying, yeah, but all your cooking utensils, they're silver and reflective, yeah, they're stainless steel. Oh, you've got white kitchen roll, that's noticeable. Oh, and also your food bag and your water container's white, yes it is. But unless you're right on top of me, you're not going to see them. And returning to the stick table as well, you can see I've just relocated slightly more in the shade. Reclined a chair, I was sitting back chilling a little while ago. But say that stick table, I can just move it around with the chair, but I have actually got, that actually came with it, a rectangular table which is about 12 inches square, which has got a clamp, and it actually fastens to the upright just underneath the armrest, whereby it can go either side, then just clamps round and screw it tight, and then you can swing the table outwards or inwards. But the problem is, I've mislaid the inner rubber grommet that grips the tubing of the upright of the chair, and because that isn't actually part of the clamp now, it's too wide, so it will actually slide down, so it won't fasten securely enough, hence me bringing the stick table. So the PFD personal flotation device jacket. On top of that, I'm going to be using that as a pillow with a couple of other bits underneath it as well for when I sleep tonight. But you can see that my book, Annapurna, given to me by an old school friend who found out that I did Everest Base Camp, and I'm now planning sometime in the near future to do Tibet, go to Lhasa, and also the northeast part of the Himalayas where Annapurna is, and do the trail which goes round the Annapurna circuit as it's called. But also there's a park or part of an area that's connected to it which is like a preservation area. So I'm wanting to do that in the near future, maybe the next 12 to 18 months. But a lot of you know I did Everest Base Camp, it was successful. Out of 8 of us that went, only 6 made it, 2 had to pull out for one reason or another, not being able to contend with it. I'm going to chill back and relax here. But I'll probably talk a little bit more about Everest Base Camp, just some highlights of it. But I have uploaded my previous video to this one. It's a very brief video, it's not even 15 minutes of highlights of my experience on the Himalayas in Nepal. Doing the Everest Base Camp trail, which was just an experience of a lifetime, a place I've always wanted to go to, the Himalayas. And when I got the all clear September last year, 2018, after the spread over the 2 years of having my hip replacement, total hip replacement surgery, given the all clear, and I thought, right, now I'm able-bodied compared to, don't really want to think about it, where I was struggling to crawl up the stairs on my hands and knees and sliding down on my arse because I couldn't actually walk up the stairs. But now I've been given a more of a mobile, fit bill of health. Hence I did the Everest Base Camp, and all the training I did really paid dividends. I didn't have any side effects from taking the trail, which was the maximum height. Elevation was nearly 5.5 kilometres altitude, sort of vertically up into the sky, one of the highest points I actually got to. And that was even before getting to Everest Base Camp, because we had to take a different part of the trail. But I will upload the full version of basically the epic journey that I took to the Himalayas, which I say was an experience of a lifetime. It was absolutely fantastic. Words, pictures, images just don't do it justice. Just being there, experiencing it was just absolutely awesome. There was a few unexpected circumstances that arose, but I say it was just an experience of a lifetime, so I will be uploading the full video version very soon. Okay, so I've got my Blitzwolf 3-panel solar charger, but I've actually taken from it the lead and I've plugged it into my multi-charge. I get about half a dozen charges out of this, full charges on my mobile phone. And I actually took this on the Everest Base Camp trail when I wanted to upload pictures onto Instagram and Facebook, social media, that sort of thing. And it really did well. There was a couple of times when I could actually charge this in some of the units of the lodges on the way to Everest Base Camp on the trail in the Khumbu Valley. But when I'm outdoors, sort of for a leisurely time, wild camping, all that sort of thing, I'll always bring my phone with me for backup if there's an emergency. I think that's really important. A lot of people that say, oh, you know, you take your technical gizmos with you, you know, you just want to disconnect from it, and well, yeah, but if there's a problem, you need the backup. So I don't use my phone. I don't use my phone for personal contact, you know, conversations, texts, all that sort of thing while I'm out. I just use it to upload pictures, like as I've done so far this weekend, to Instagram and Maverick Outdoors Facebook page as well, Maverick Outdoors #1 Instagram. And just to sort of upload, keep people sort of posted with what I'm doing, sharing their experiences, and then hoping to sort of inspire people to get out and do the same thing. Not necessarily maybe this weekend, but by sort of watching what others do, it can sometimes inspire people to just get out there, whether it's canoeing, wild camping, trekking, anything like that. I'll probably go into this battery pack back up another time, but you can see there's 4 light dots on there. It was fully charged before I brought it out, and that indicates, and obviously when it gets down to 2, then 1, you know it's virtually on its way out. But here I'm just charging it up, so if I've got any more pictures later on, sort of the campfire, that sort of thing. Okay, so that's the L-shaped fire pit. Got the little recess to scrape some big coals, then put the metal grid on where I'm then going to cook the chicken and the sausages. But I don't really need a fire pit that big. I don't need it for heat tonight really, I don't need it for light. Just basically just a bit of a creature comfort, having a bit of a fire, but just big enough so that I can get the coals for cooking. And I know people are going to think, oh, I'll never use a cutting device, a blade, a sharp, for digging in the ground or anything like that. This is absolutely awesome. I've dug, I don't know, since last year about 4 fire pits with this, cut wood. It hasn't needed sharpening at all, albeit I do have a lawnmower blade sharpener which I keep in the sheath. I think it cost me about 6-7 quid off eBay. So it's a lawnmower blade file, but this really works well. As I say, I've very seldom had to sharpen this, and this is worth its weight in gold. Cost me about 15 quid. Really basic, easy to get hold of outdoors activity survival suppliers, and that's the Brazilian bolo. It's now dark, it's just coming up to 10 o'clock at night, and I'm going to get the fire going now. It's got a little bit chilly. Obviously there was no cloud cover today to keep the warmth of the sun in, so of course all the heat normally rises when that happens. So it's got a bit of quite a fresh bite in the air now. So I've put my t-shirt on and also my shirt and a pair of long cargo trousers, lightweight summery clothes, just right for this time of year without getting all hot and flustered, but just keep the chill off. What I've done is I've taken out from this box, I've just got a lot of these eco-friendly from the pound shop
This is about half the pack, so I've just brought a load of these with me. It's going to be simple, starting the fire, getting these going. And in my mobile fire starting kit that I always bring with me, I've just got other fancy stuff there: cigarette lighter, Vaseline, some cotton wool pads that have been soaked, well actually more dabbed in with Vaseline, so these burn for about a good 3-4 minutes. But so I've got a load of these, so I just want it easy, simple, just get the fire going without having to be any elaborate skills to try and spark it up. Something that I haven't attached to myself for quite a while is my little utility strap, and I've just looped it onto the belt loop of my trousers. But yeah, I've got the fire still, small little mini torch that's quite bright for its size. Also emergency whistle, a lighter, petrol lighter, and also a can opener. But I just keep these on me, so if I do need anything on here, it just goes straight in my pocket. Easy access. So let's just get this fire going. Don't want to faff around, just want to get it ignited. So I've got myself a nicely shaped pistol handgun style fire prodding stick. You see, I've put one of the jacket potatoes in there in the foil. I don't like using foil normally, but I only use it cooking outdoors. I don't use it domestically because it's really convenient outdoors. So this will go. There was 2 bits of foil for 2 of the potatoes, which I put in my food box. And then the foil for the 3rd potato was actually wrapped around the sausages to keep those cool, but everything's defrosted now, so I'm going to cook it all tonight. So this is going to be my, well, nearly a midnight feast, I reckon. But I'm really looking forward to this because I haven't done it in a very, very long time, since sort of, I don't know, autumn last year. So it's just nice to get it back in the vibe. Bit of campfire cooking on a lovely summer's evening. Bit of a chill factor, but it's all good stuff. So eventually placed some even thicker pieces of wood, and when they burn down into the coals, they're going to be a good size to then go underneath that little recess where that grill is to do the chicken and sausages. So by having the fire pit sort of recessed at the head end of my tarp basher, I'm now standing by the riverbank. And I know the digital camera doesn't sort of pick up what I can see with my head torch on. I can see all the shrubbery in front of me, as you will now. But just where I am by the riverbank, and my basher's just there, just beyond that tree. But I'll turn my torch off again, head torch off. And it doesn't really bring that much attention unless you're right on top of me. As I sort of pan round, obviously it's all dark over there, but if anyone does attempt to approach anywhere beyond what you can see illuminated, it's not as if from that distance they're going to really see the fire pit. So it's just a personal choice, whereas if it was right on the riverbank where I'm actually standing now, it would be much more visible and it would probably bring, you know, draw attention, and that's obviously what I don't want. So it's only at a last resort that someone actually might see that fire. Yeah, they're going to smell the smoke, but we're talking about what is visible. So that's why I wanted the fire pit on that end of my setup rather than by the riverbank. And wherever I pitch up, I like to draw the least amount of attention as possible.
And a lot of times it has worked because people have marauded near my battery when I've had a fire going, or I've just had a little bit of activity, and all of a sudden they've gone, oh, we've just walked into someone's pitch. They didn't even know I was there. Mainly because of just the little techniques I like to do. Oh, there's a moth. When I set up my pitch. And what I find interesting and enjoyable when you're just getting a small little fire going for a specific use, in this case, as I explain what I'm cooking, it's just looking at some bits that are burning sort of say in the centre, but then there might be a piece of wood sort of further on the edge that you need to just move in so then it equally burns and spreads out. And then you've got an equal amount of coals rather than some bits that you can use sort of to go underneath the grill there, but then they might have a little bit of unburnt wood connected to it, so it's just sort of breaking off some of the charcoal burnt bits which then can become coals, and the bits that are still yet to be burnt, it's just trying to do it so that it all sort of burns equally. So you're just moving bits and pieces around, just reading it, looking at it, and it can be quite therapeutic sometimes, like as it is with any campfire. When you light it and the flames just sort of mesmerises you, makes you feel relaxed. I can feel just the right amount of warmth. The fire's not too big, so it's just a comfortable warmth considering the slight chill in the air. But yeah, it's just reading the fire, knowing what you're actually using it for, and then sort of logically approaching it to think, well, if I need an equal amount of coals at the same, sort of run about the same time, I don't want all of a sudden just a few and then half the wood's not been burnt through, so it's just moving it around, shuffling it about a bit, which I'm just about to do again in a moment. But I reckon those potatoes, they'll take, the size of them are not too big, and the sort of heat that's coming from the fire, and again it's, you know, from experience, looking at the fire, looking at the flames, how it's burning, how long it's been burning for, where it's burning, where you put the potatoes. It's all of that. I've had questions in the past about, well, how long does it take to do a jacket potato on a campfire? You know, how long's a bit of string? It all depends really on the size of the potatoes, the heat that you know that's generating, and once you've done it a few times, no different from cooking with an oven at home. You know, you get used to it. One oven that's cooking at 180 degrees and another oven that's supposed to be the same heat might be slightly different. So you just get used to the things that you're using, and in this case just getting used to how fires burn and how you're going to use them and what you're using them for. Just a bit of reflective fire craft philosophy. Probably if I didn't explain that, I'd have a load of comments going, well, what do you do? How do you make sure it all burns equally? Well, there you got the answer. Three jacket potatoes, just slightly, well, actually very crispy on the outside, a little bit charcoaled, very, very slightly. Normally happens when you do them in the foil, but it's just nicely cooked through. Melted butter. So I'm going to scoop out the centres and have a few mouthfuls of the crunchy skins as well, and then get on to the piece de la resistance, chicken thighs, just cooked just right.
So my sleep surface was what I've done previously in other wild camps, just doubled up the mats and then that little bit as an extra bit of padding. But what I did this time, underneath the flotation jacket, I put my canoe seat booster that I made out of 3 squares of 25mm polystyrene, and of course gaffer taped it all. So basically this time just improvised this one like that, voila el pillow. And as I normally do, partially deflated mats, and I can use that as a sit-on surface if I have to sit on the floor, and not using the chair or the stool. Clothing aired that I slept in last night, t-shirt, lightweight cargo trousers inside out, and then of course my softy jacket, trousers and shirt, and of course a buff that was over the head. If it was wet weather, sort of cold season, that sort of thing, obviously then if there's a chance of your clothing getting wet, you're not going to hang it outside. So probably just give it a good shake around, maybe just leave it on a surface underneath your tarp or basher in your tent or anything like that. Always keep your footwear on, but I loosen the laces so it's more comfortable when you're asleep, just in case you have to get up during the night. And of course wearing the softy jacket and trousers instead of getting into a lightweight sleeping bag. Again, if there's something that disturbs during the night and you're not sure and you've got to check it out, then I can just get up straight away. And I'm ready to sort out whatever is a concern. I've mentioned it many times before, you know, you don't know who's out on the waterways, even let alone wild camping in the woods. So there's strange people about nowadays, so you just got to be one step ahead just in case. I've seen a few stories of recent in local news whereby there have been people that are on the run, and they're quite unsavoury characters with a violent history, and have gone to try and escape the law and camp out in the woods. Now if you're going to be nearby someone, you know, you're enjoying yourself out, you know, enjoying nature and all the stuff that we do, majority of times you're probably going to be okay. But you know, everyone thinks it's always going to happen to someone else, so you know, situational awareness, personal safety, all that sort of thing is really important when you're outdoors and you don't know who is around. A number of times I've camped out on the rivers and on the river banks, and in a nice sort of secluded spot, and you know, someone's come around just by chance, happened to come upon you and looked a bit suspect and then gone away again. I didn't know who they were, so maybe it's just as well that I was aware that they were there, that they did actually go away. And also when I've camped up nearby a few years back, cut a long story short, I had a few items that went missing. It was a small fire pit digging spade shovel, very small one, and put it somewhere where you had to be looking to try and find something. And I think it was probably someone that had been moving around in a boat and had seen me. That's what I could sort of detect, and came back 2 weeks later and a fire grid for the campfire cooking food had disappeared, and so had my shovel. So you know, what if I'd have been there? Probably the stuff wouldn't have been taken. But yet again, I don't know who that person was, and I'm not going to be asking any questions and if someone wants to actually invade my private space in somewhat of a threatening manner, if you get my gist. But on a happy note, let's see what's in the food box. I'm either going to have me chocolate croissants and heat them up in the toastery gizmo, or maybe have some scrambled eggs. Can't make my mind up yet, and I can't make my mind up whether or not, I think I'll just use that for the odd brew, but I think I'll get the firebox stove going to cook or heat up my food. The fire pit is going to be more effort to get going, don't mind, but it's actually in a very sunny area, so I don't want to heat the fire to cook my food and also get sunburn. So fire's going to be out of action till maybe at least this evening. So I've got my food at the ready to go in that toaster. But the beauty of the firebox, especially in this weather, is that you can use little bits of stick. That's some of the stuff I actually got from the fire pit last night just to get the fire going. But you know, if I want other little bits and pieces, the beauty of the firebox, you don't have to use very much wood, and it's not labour intensive. I mean, I'm just picking up, especially this time of year, dry sticks, and these are just going to kick in without any effort at all once I've used the firelighter to get it going. So once again, via the firebox, I've got my mobile kitchen. Just move the stuff around and just locate it where you want. At least I can actually sit down now and enjoy preparing my brekkie. Turn it over a few times. Only take about 5-6 minutes, job done. And at the same time boil up some water for a coffee. Breakfast is now served. I couldn't wait to sit down. I had to eat one of those. Ooh, really nice. Warm, slightly crispy on the outside, warm and melted chocolate. And now to have my brew. And sitting now on the comfy chair. Geese in the background. And then a little while later on my hammock and reading my book to chill on this lovely bank holiday weekend Sunday. You've just got to take time out sometimes to just be in the moment, where it's woods, open fields, meadows. Well, I don't really have to explain it anymore, really. That's why we do it, enjoying the outdoors. And of course, you've got to eat, no different from when you're indoors. So hence including some of my eating lifestyle. But in a little while later, I'll just give you some highlight points of the Everest Base Camp trek I did in May. So these Flameless ration heaters normally just heat up the sachet of food within 8 to 10 minutes. I've left it in there because I've been pottering around for a good 15 odd minutes and it is still absolutely scalding, piping hot on the back. A little bit of a tip, what I've found with some of these, the little insert membrane with the particles, sometimes they can compact if you've had these little Flameless ration heater packs for a long while. And a few of them, I bought a batch of about 20 about 4 years ago, and they're all made at the same time, and I got a job lot at a really good price. They worked out something like 99 pence each, and I've used a few of them, but then I think last year, I used a couple just when I was out for the day, sort of trekking and then just heating up a convenient MRE, and they didn't actually heat up that well, just sort of lukewarm. But then what I found was that I sort of twisted them about a little bit without breaking the actual membrane paper that the particles are in, and they work even better. So even if you've got new ones that haven't been stored for a while, maybe just a little bit of a tip is, you know, before you put the water in and ready to use it, just sort of manipulate it, flex it about a little bit. And I noticed I really did it well this time with this particular sausage casserole. And it started to heat up within sort of 5-10 seconds and then started to get really hot. And sometimes after about 15-20 minutes they start to cool down and you can sort of touch them, but put the back of my fingers there and I can't because it's scalding hot. So just again, a little bit of advice, sort of manipulate the dust package around with all the chemical particles in, and then you'll probably find it's more absorbent for this to be more reactive and more efficient to heat up your food. So I found that out just by chance of experimenting and then just wondering why they weren't heating up as efficiently as sometimes, you know, other ones do. So I've found now every time I sort of like flex them about a little bit, they really work effectively. So it's worth considering if ever you've had problems with them. You can do it with your gloves on if you're concerned about burning your fingers, but if you just sort of like squeeze it about a little bit, it equally transfers the heat that's coming from the heating section. So it's a bit like what you'd be doing if you're actually stirring a casserole in a pot.
So I'm just sort of mixing it about with my fingers and thumbs. And you can do that a couple of times while it's heating, but again, be careful you don't burn your fingers. And finally, if you've not used these before, you're not well versed with them, you notice I took off, there's a little notch at the side which is easy to tear off the top and then fill in the water, and then when it's finished heating, obviously you fold it up to seal it, insulate it so it heats up. But then there's another little notch a little bit lower down where you can see I've torn it, and then I can easily take the food sachet out. And you can see on the food sachet pouch there's a little notch either side which you could just tear across. And then a lot of people say that you can just push that in, you can stand it on its end, but I prefer to actually cut it with a knife diagonally across. Then I've got sort of like a triangle shaped pot to either put in my lap or just holding on to it if it's not too hot, or else if it is with a glove. As you can see, which I've done there, which I prefer, so that's just a personal choice, and it just makes it a bigger, easier opening to actually serve your food. Another improvised use for now, the folded kneeling mat, just any of the dust that walks into your footprint. Job done. Sometimes I'll boil up more water than I actually need, just a little bit more than I need to actually make a cup of tea or coffee or whatever the hot drink is, and then a little bit left over which is still hot, to then rinse over anything that's just a little bit grubby from the spoon I was just eating with, either with a scourer, which I didn't actually bring with me this weekend, so I wasn't expecting anything to get really sort of unhealthily contaminated. Then I'll just rinse it over, wipe it over with the old paper towel. Job done for that, ready for the next meal. Okay, so I've just been sitting down reading my Annapurna book for the past, just on and off the past hour and a half, 2 hours. About 2 hours ago, just the direction I'm facing now, not even 60 metres above the top of that grass, which is below waist level to where I'm pitched. A group of 4 young ladies in a rowboat which I saw come past me, and then they did a U-turn to go up to that bank, which is, as I say, about 60 metres further up from me. They moored up and then did some swimming. They moored up the boat. But what I was saying earlier on about sort of the colour, sort of blending in the colour scheme, alright, so I've got straight lines and diagonals and all that sort of thing. But I know for sure the 45 odd minutes they were there playing around, having a joke and a laugh, they didn't know I was here. Albeit they looked over this direction countless times, and it wasn't until I went to put my canoe in just about 10 minutes ago that they paddled past, and I heard them speaking and reacting to the fact that the canoe was there, and then of course saw the apex of my basher, which obviously surprised them. So obviously all the time that they were there, obviously there was no problem, but they didn't know I was here. So point being, unless you're actually sort of like looking for someone, I think personally it would have been quite safe, a safety factor for them to consider that when they moored up, just to look around and see if anyone else was about. Personally, my natural habit would be, anywhere I go, if I'm going to pitch up or stop off for a while, I want to see what's around, if there's anyone else, what the terrain is like, that sort of thing. But they kept very secluded, and it's just as well that I'm a normal person, that I was getting on with my activities and thought, well, if they do come over, then I'll just introduce myself and tell them what I'm doing if they were inquisitive. But of course that didn't happen, because they didn't know I was here until they went to paddle past and saw the canoe, and then saw, of course, my shelter. Anyway, it's coming up to about nearly 5 o'clock in the afternoon, so I'm going to get in the canoe and go for a little leisurely paddle up the stream and just see what's about, and just basically enjoy the rest of the sunlight day, as now it's just the heat's reduced a little bit like it does later on in the afternoon, so it's going to be more comfortable and not all sort of hot and sweaty to sort of have a little paddle about on the river. You just can't beat the tranquility of the river during the summer, especially when there's a blue sky up above. Absolutely spot on. Past a few narrow boats, Just going around these backwaters. It's just the season. Brilliant time of year to be living on a narrow boat. It's a hard life, especially when it's the autumn and the winter, but it really makes the most of it and really pays dividends. Something I've considered, but that's another story. Now come on to a wider stretch of the Thames. Narrow boat with a hard shell canoe on top of it. That's the main stretch going downstream. It's nice as well when the canoe's not loaded, just you in it. Bottle of drink. Loads of people have been wild swimming. It's just nice to have a lightweight, empty canoe. And it just flows really easy. Bit of life on the waters, a few other paddlers up there. Another one in a K1. Little island here in the middle of the Thames. From previous experience, it's all fenced off, barbed wire fencing and posted and what have you, no access. Shame. Quaint little island, that one. Here we go, the obligatory herons are always on the Thames. Always perch on sort of quite high sort of platforms. Obviously that speaks for itself. But normally on sort of dead trees. I bet he's going to take flight. Let's just see the wingspan. Yeah, here we go. Hey. Oh, he just frightened a geese by the sound of it when he flew into the tree. So I'm now coming down the other side of that non-accessible barbed wire little island. A couple of launches gone by. But really the sort of common unspoken highway code of the rivers is that if you see unmotorised vessels, i.e. rowboats, canoes, kayaks, anything that doesn't have a motor that's man-powered, you're supposed to slow down if you've got a motorised boat, because of course the wake and the waves can affect more unstable vessels. I mean, this obviously is stable, it's not going to sink because it's inflatable, but you know, the common highway code, and normally the ones that normally adhere to it, that know all about it, the majority of the times are the narrow boat dwellers, people that actually live on the rivers and know what it's all about. And of course the highway code in the rivers is you navigate to the right, or if the boats, motorised boats, obviously stay in the centre, but then if there's an oncoming boat coming towards, then they both veer off to the right. I've seen a few people, especially canoeists, out for a leisurely paddle and don't know and think that it's like on the roads in the UK. You stay on the left, and I've seen a few people nearly come a cropper and not knowing what the actual sort of highway code process is. But here, obviously being on the right, I'm now in a bit of shade and there's a nice cool breeze just on this sort of little curve. So it's catching the wind a little bit, so it's quite nice. Just to sit for a moment and just ponder on the water as it now just rotates round. And there was about half a dozen K2 kayakers just went up there. So everyone's out enjoying the weekend, and you can only do it in a canoe. You can see the sights and sounds obviously from the riverbank, but it's just something totally different when you're actually on the water. It just puts a totally different dimension to it. Obviously that's why it's one of my favourite pastimes, wild camping, canoeing on the rivers. Now back into the sunlight, right in the middle of the ancient Old Dark, as it's known, River Thames. Love the place. Okay, keeping hydrated in the warm weather. I use my water to go bottle. You've seen me use this before. I actually took it to Everest Base Camp just in case there was any sort of contaminated water. Although the group I was with, they were filtering it with a soil filter. But again, long story as to why you know, you don't use any water that could be stored on the Himalayan trail. But I also had it in this pouch. This pouch I actually got about 5-6 years ago, and it's got a zip at the front, which I sometimes put a hexi stove, and also in the top I put my hobo stove that I made about 10 years ago. But I also can use it for lots of other different things, other sort of cooking utensils, a stainless steel bottle, if you want to boil up water with a hexi stove or any stuff. But when I was in the Himalayas doing the Everest Base Camp trail, I had my snacks in this front pouch, and this was really, really convenient and practical to use. Plus I could attach anything if I wanted to onto the webbing. So I took this out with me in the canoe, But I thought I'd just feature this and just show you this is actually was my drinking device. But I also had a stainless steel bottle, which was 2 litres, which I think has got a clean canteen stainless steel, and I would fill that up, put it in my small day pack, then have this around my waist. So I always had 3 litres of water, because when you're trekking altitude you have to keep hydrated. It's a really important thing. Quite a broad subject which I'll go into another time.